I am State Representative Dianne Hart, and I'm your host tonight on the Lit TV Network on Tampa Bay TV. You can reach us every Wednesday night at 7 o'clock. All you do is go to Roku, and then you put in the Lit TV Network, scroll down, and you'll see Tampa Bay TV. Let me tell you all a little bit about the gentleman that I have the pleasure of interviewing tonight. That is Mr. Dowridge. I've probably known Mr. Dowridge probably 20 years minimum.
Minimum,
maybe longer than that, because I met you when I was in my salon.
Many years ago.
That's right. Mr. Dowridge is just a phenomenal gentleman with so much history and knowledge. You know, we're going to kind of open it up and we're going to have a conversation. So, Mr. Dowridge, I just want to say thank you so much for joining me. I greatly appreciate it.
Well, Representative Dianne, I want to say thank you very much for having me this evening as your guest. And yes, at the minimum, 20 years, at the most, maybe 30 years. See how young we are?
That's exactly correct.
Yes.
But where were you born?
I was born in Baltimore, Maryland, John Hopkins Hospital, Thanksgiving Day.
So you're a Thanksgiving baby.
I'm a Thanksgiving baby. Yes.
When did you move to Tampa?
I moved to Tampa in 1974 from the South Bronx. My biological father retrieved me from foster care at the age of 12. I entered into the foster care system at the age of 2, and he retrieved me at the age of 12. So that's 10 years under his guardianship, if you will. The harshness and what have you that I had experienced in the foster homes continued with him. So it was very abusive, physical and verbal abuse that I suffered at his hands.
So you're saying that your father got you from foster care to abuse you?
Yes. And just to let you know, I still go to the doctor for what he did to me when I was 17 years old. I still go to the doctor for that.
Wow.
Yes. As a matter of fact, our last encounter, he stabbed me 5 times.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So I still go to the doctor for that. Yeah.
I had no idea that you endured such hardship. So how are you doing today?
Fabulous. God bless.
Wonderful.
You know, and a lot of people ask me after all that trauma, how am I the person I am today? I'm going to let you know that 2 people come to mind. One of them is Bill Withers with his song, Grandma Hands.
Right.
I believe the other one is Marvin Winans, and I can't remember the song in reference to grandmother. And my grandmother, she really pulled me through, passed away in 79. However, you know, she forecast my future. She told me what I need to do to be here at this moment talking to you, you know.
I know that's right.
And all I had to do was follow suit. It wasn't an overnight remedy.
Right.
I still had to go through and bump my head a few times. But thank God that I got it together. And here we are. I went in the military. I did 5.5 years in the military, the U.S. Army. When I got out, I went to the United States Post Office here in Tampa, the main one at the airport, where I became the first Black manager of a department there. You know, my life has always been, even to this minute, excel, you know, be my best, do my best, strive, you know, and I'm very hard on myself to bring out my best. And I don't know if that's a result of, I guess, for the lesser word, of running away from my past. But I know that there's always something greater, something more elevated that I can reach to. So I'm always challenging myself to, you know, to bring that best to the table.
As we all should do. We should always try to do our absolute best to be the best person that we can. So I don't think it's because you're running. I think it's because you're a perfectionist and you want to do your best. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. If we could instill that in these young folk, boy, wouldn't we have something?
Yeah, since you said that, for the last 24, well, really, after I retired from the post office and started DLD Enterprises, my business, it was built on being able to go back into, quote unquote, the hood, being able to go back and educate, empower, and elevate, enhance our young brothers and sisters so that they can see my life as an example. They can take their life, take it to the next level of their greatness in their lifetime. I've been a vendor with Hillsborough County Schools for the last 24 years. I'm the type, when I passion is love, and one thing about me with what I do for the last 30 some years, I know it ain't about me. It's about the God in me. So that's why I go that extra mile. I'm always going the extra mile. So because I know somebody captured me, somebody saved me. So I feel like playing it forward is my mission to try to help somebody else as I go forward.
Well, you might always remember when I end my shows, I typically say, be a blessing to someone else and someone will be a blessing to you. And that's
Amen.
exactly what I mean, because the more we can give, the more we get. It's a universal law. You don't have to do anything. Just know that if you are a blessing to others, there will be somebody who will definitely be a blessing to you. So for me, I believe that as long as we're helping others, my parents used to say, you should be a vessel for others, for all the things that you have done out in our community to help our young people. I live over in the hood, as they might call it. I call it the neighborhood, but it's still the hood nevertheless.
It's our hood.
That's right. Born and raised in it and happy to be.
I know
it doesn't, and what I try to instill in the kids, it doesn't matter where you're from. It has nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
It's what's inside of you and where you want to go, because you can go anywhere you want. So let me ask you this. I know that you have performed Frederick Douglass all over this country. What got you into performing Frederick Douglass and portraying him?
Well, my dear friend, it's called elementary, dear Watson, elementary. Believe it or not, I got up one morning and I was brushing my teeth. And I heard Frederick Douglass 3 times, just like you're talking to me, live in living color. That's how I heard it 3 times. And after I got myself together, I went to which is now known as the Strauss Theater. Back then, it was the Tampa Bay Performing Arts Center. Uh-huh. And I went and spoke with a representative, and the representative was so kind to give me, and when I say give, I should say donate, the Tico Theater. And I performed there at the Tico Theater every year from 2009 to 2013 as Frederick Douglass. And 2013 was the climax. That was my last year there, and it just seemed like the doors of the world began to open. That's when, 2014, that's when 10 years ago, that's when I began to travel the highways and the byways, taking Frederick Douglass throughout. And it's been a blessing, and it still is a blessing.
Can you tell us who Frederick is? Yeah, let me hear Frederick.
You put me on the spot. No. Well, Frederick Douglass, he was born February 14th, 1818, as a slave in Eastern Maryland. As that child, he saw a lot of harsh treatment going through with the other slaves. He also had a white father, and it is said to be Captain Aaron Anthony, Frederick's grandmother, Betty Bailey, took care of when he was a child. The highlight, if you will, of Frederick's slave years was when he had the big fight with Master Corvée. This was a 2-hour fight. Frederick, in the midst of it, was not attempting to kill the master, hurt the master, but his foray was basically to keep the master at bay. Right. So they fought for 2 hours, and after that 2 hours, he never was approached ever again. Now, I will say that once he escaped on September the 3rd, 1838, making his way up to New York, and him and Anna, who became his wife, she was a free woman, and they made it up to New Bedford, where he wound up meeting William Lloyd Garrison. We just said Frederick. His given name is Frederick Augustus Washington Bailey. Once he got to New York, they changed his last name. When he got to New Bedford, he noticed that there were a lot of Johnsons up there, so he petitioned to have his name changed again. The married couple's house he was at, they were, believe it or not, Johnsons. Frederick said, well, there's too many Johnsons. I need to do away with that name. So Mr. Johnson came up with The Lady of the Lake, which was a play. Douglass said, well, you know what? I'll take that name. He became Frederick Douglass, and he wanted to keep Frederick because he wanted to keep some type of identity, his birthright identity, and he went with Douglass. But the difference was he wanted 2 S instead of 1 S. Usually when I'm doing my shows, I'll tell everybody to repeat after me, because the way I say it, I say Douglass.
Right.
I ride on the S, and I tell people that Douglas, that's basically when he's approaching, people say his name, that's that respect they putting on it.
Right.
He started going to these anti-slavery meetings with William Lloyd Garrison. Mr. Garrison hired Frederick, paid him $75 a week, which was a lot of money back then. And they traveled to the Southern Circuit, if you will, 6 states and what have you. I did say earlier that the fight with Corvée, where no one ever really fought with Frederick again. Well, when he got on the speaking circuit, there were certain stops that they did, and they were bum rush, if I can use that term, on stage. Because of that, Frederick, he broke his right hand, but it healed. He got into a fist fight with someone, and they almost gashed his eye out. He made it through that. When he wrote his first book, which came out in 1845, The Narrative and Life of Frederick Douglass, he had to leave the country for 2 years. He left Anna and the kids, went over to Canada, where 2 awesome young ladies put money together to purchase his freedom. So they wanted him to bring his family there, but he said, no, I need to go back to America because there are more Black people there who are still in chains, and I need to go back and be with them and see what I can do to get them released. Upon being purchased from his master, Hugh Ard, he came back to America, gathered his wife up, and moved to Washington. There were some things that he didn't like, so he invited himself to the White House, and he garnished a meeting with President Lincoln. They discussed 3 things that was really on his heart and on his mind. One was the Civil War and the absence of Black men in the Civil War. Number 2 was the voting rights, not just for men, but for women. And number 3, the most important one, was the abolishment of slavery. Abraham Lincoln, as I mentioned in the monologue, he went to the window, opened the curtains, and when he looked out, he looked 100 years into the future. He was looking at the Lincoln Monument, and where he saw himself sitting up there in his chair. And as he looked down, there was this 5'6" Black man standing in front of Mike in a podium saying, free at last, free at last. That was August 28th, 1963. So the moral of the story is President Lincoln was looking 100 years into the future. And if he would have got his way, and all those presidents and all those Democrats back there would have got their way, we as Black folks wouldn't have been freed until August 28th, 1963.
Wow.
So, yeah, because he was looking 100 years into the future. Basically, he told Frederick Douglass, he said, Mr. Douglass, I understand what you're saying. However, we cannot move too fast, because if we move too fast, we will send this country into a greater war. So we must take our time. So his time was, like I said, 1963. Douglass left the White House, and the rest is history. January 1, 1863, that's when the Emancipation Proclamation came to life, freeing Blacks. But as you know, though they were free, they were not free.
This is just phenomenal to listen to it. We're going to finish this history lesson, everybody, so we're going to take a break, and we'll be right back.
You are watching The Opening Statement with your host, Dianne Hart, right here on Tampa Bay Television Network.
Well, welcome back to the opening statement, where I have the wonderful pleasure of interviewing Mr. Donald Dowridge. Mr. Dowridge, let's finish this story. We know we were not free, even though we were free. How did that become?
Basically, when Massa, if you will, indicated to the slaves that they were free, the only thing that was negative about that is the fact that though we were free, what were we free to do? We had no knowledge, we had no financial resources, we had no shelter, and we had no type of, if you will, and quite naturally, they didn't have transportation back there, but they had no horses, no mules. So that comes into the 40 acres and a mule that we did not have. So eventually what happened, most slaves wound up staying on the plantation and continuing working. When it came to payday, it was no payday. Why wasn't it a payday? It wasn't a payday because Massa came up with the scheme is that you sleeping in my bed, you eating my food, you wearing my clothes, I have to deduct all that. That means that in order for you to pay me, you got to go out to the fields and you got to do the work, and that's how you're going to pay me. So quite naturally, as time went on, they began to get the nerve up to make that migration, if you will, to north and to other parts of this country to garnish their freedom. As a generation of kids began to come into the world, if you will, that were born, they were born willing and able to want to be educated, to move forth. So even if it meant, like Frederick, stealing books to get his knowledge, quite naturally, we had passed that point, but still, those slaves that were free in that early going still had to be educated. You can be free, but free to do what? Take it for granted. Back then, you didn't have the cities, the towns that we have today's with the structures that we have and the technology. So where would they go? They couldn't get on the phone, the cell phone, and call out. But eventually it all panned out because we had great people that came along, such as Harriet Tubman. Her work that she did as far as the Underground Railroad, helping blacks to escape to the north and to Canada. And she had Underground Railroad stops along the route. She also educated Frederick Douglass on being part of the railroad. It was not an actual railroad with trains and what have you. It was basically railroads that consisted of on foot in the dark, battling with snakes, hogs, and what have you to get to that freedom in the north. At 5'2", Harriet, she was a very brave woman to do what she did. I know there was a setback in reference to her being on a $20 bill. I hope that comes to pass because I definitely want one.
I do too, and I can't exactly remember what happened. It's been some years ago. It was Congress or somebody up there that would not approve it, and I can't quite remember the whole story around it.
Yeah, it was right there at the door, and I don't know what happened that freezed it such as it did. And please understand, when you talk about the $20 bill situation, if I'm not mistaken, we was dealing with COVID, or we were just coming out of COVID. You got a whole lot of avenues of issues that were going on to sidetrack putting our sister on that $20 bill.
I know.
Yeah,
was that awful? Put her on it anyway.
You had other great people that came along, like George Washington Carver. Influential as he was, believe it or not, with Tuskegee University, the peanuts and what have you. I mean, this man had over 100 patents for things that he discovered just working with peanuts. He paved the way. We are rich in history, and I must say that back in my days when I lived in New York, even though I was living the street life, I still had the opportunity to grasp hold of some historical figures back in the 70s and the 80s, if you will, like Shirley Chisholm, first black woman that was running for president of the United States. Yeah, and I'm going to go ahead on and say it. I might get in trouble for it, but
why?
The man that didn't take no crap, no other than Adam Clayton Powell.
Oh, yeah.
Congressman from Harlem. These are some of the people who helped move the needle forward. We all can talk about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, John Lewis, and we can also talk about Mr. Garvey. I'll share this about Marcus Garvey. Mr. Garvey, his campaign was basically to have all blacks to leave and go back to Africa. Well, Frederick Douglass in his debate basically was, though I was not born here, though I was brought here as a slave against my will, but now that I'm here, I recommend that we, the black people, that we stay and we make this country our country. And Frederick actually came out in his own words and said how much he loved living in this country. As a matter of fact, when Frederick died at the age of 77 in 1895, he did not die a poor man. He was abundantly financially rich. I would recommend to anybody, to everybody, if they ever get the opportunity in their lifetime to go to Anacostia in Washington, D.C. to Mr. Douglass' home. It's a 15-room luxury home that he purchased for him and Anna. Unfortunately, after 40 years, Anna passed away. After she passed away, a year and a half or maybe 2 years later, at the age of 66, he got remarried.
I was just going to ask you, did he have children?
He had 4 children. He had 21 grandchildren. Unfortunately, in that nice, beautiful home that they had, they wound up losing. Not only did he lose Anna, but he lost a lot of his grandkids. He lost one of his sons because of diseases that they didn't have cure for back then.
Yeah.
With the amount of his family members being demised, it really hampered Frederick. And a lot of people don't know that. It's almost like with Dr. King, when you talk about Dr. King smoking cigarettes, we got to understand that these are human beings that we're talking about.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. These are regular people.
Myself, you, we got something going on.
Absolutely. Or had something going on
Or had
at
something
some
going
point in time. Absolutely.
So I'm sitting here looking at my closet door right now, and I'm scared to open it because of them skeletons in there.
I had a girlfriend, she said, my skeleton's on life support. Please don't open the closet.
We as Black folks, we have a lot of rich history. We have a lot of rich history, even here in Tampa, Florida. That history consists of, yourself, for instance. You're making history. We have the late, great Otis Anthony. I mean, I could never forget that brother. That brother, man, I mean, not only did he open doors for me, but just the mere fact of what he did up at the University of South Florida. We talk about Dale Green, who is still with us. The doors that he opened up. You talk about Mr. Earl Warren and what he did.
Attorney Delano Stewart. Mr. Cole.
And we have
who has owned so many businesses right here in our own city, even owned some shops out at the airport.
A funny story is that when I got out the military in 1983 and I came back to Tampa, as you know, you working in that profession, the hairstyle of the day was the Jerry curl.
That's right.
The Jerry curl, the California curls, and what have you. Believe it or not, when I got back to town, I said, where can I get me a Jerry curl? Everybody just pointed right there on the corner of 34th Street and MLK. And that was my introduction to Cole Barbershop. When I went in there and I got my...
Jerry curl, or there was one more. Dang,
S curl.
Yeah, S curl.
Because I used to wear mine short and very curly and whatnot, But anyway, let me stop because I'm telling all my player days. Anyway. But going back to our history, a gentleman just popped in my head, John Johnson, who brought us the likes of Ebony Magazine, Jet Magazine, Upscale Magazine. The building was housed on Grand Avenue, Chicago, Illinois. He brought that to life to make sure that we as Black folks could keep up with the times, because he realized, magazines like Life Magazine and People Magazine, they did not
have us in them.
They never did us any justice. So he put together the manuscript, if you will, so that we could have magazines that we can look at ourselves, so that we can read about us and we can see us in action. Robert Johnson went to Howard University, got 4 young men, trained them on how to work cameras. Next thing you know, 1980, we had Black Entertainment Television. He also was the first Black man, if you will, to purchase an NBA team, which was the Charlotte Bobcats, who would later be purchased by Michael Jordan, the first Black congresswoman from Texas. And I can recall back in the days, Walter Cronkite on CBS News, when they would cut to Congress and they would show Miss Barbara Jordan, her on the mic and, doing what she do. We're rich in history.
Truly, we are. We've been blessed down through history. If we can just continue to make history and get our butts out and go vote, so we can change what this country is looking like in the direction that it's heading, we can still make history. There's more history to be made, but we must go vote. We cannot sit on the sideline and stay out of the game and talk about how, my vote don't count. Well, let me assure you, as I sit here in Tallahassee every single day, I know more and more how critically important it is to cast that ballot. If we want affordable housing, if we want lower rates on insurance, if we want better access to health care, we want to clear up some of these food deserts so our babies will have food every day. We want to do something to help our homeless population. All of these things hinge on our ability to go vote. For me, that's the history that we need to make here in this country right now, to get rid of people like the former governor, he is still current governor, Ron DeSantis, who wants to take away your opportunity to learn anything about history. Don't use the word slavery. Want to encourage you that you learn something from your slavery days. No, when you brought us to this country, we had skills. That's why they went around the continent looking for people with skill so that we could help. And this is not just Black history. This is American history. We are part of what has made America a great country, period.
Yes, I piggyback with you in reference to how important the vote is. When I turned 18, one of the first things I did was register. Once I realized how important it is, and yes, we are far removed from the days we had to stand outside at the door where they would let us in in one at a time, and we had to take a test, or we had to tell them how many
count the
feathers
marbles in the jar and all that.
how many marbles. We're far removed from that. I kind of equate it with prostate cancer. For some reason, the majority of us, we refuse to get checked because of the stigma that's
attached to it.
Attached to it. On the other end of that, would you rather be selfish laying in the casket because the stigma that's attached to it? Now you turn to voting. Do you want to be selfish because you're saying it's not doing anything for me? It's not about the single person. It's about we the people. When we can get that in our heads, that it's about we the people and not just a single. It's a plural. When we vote and our vote count, so in other words, 2024, if we storm those voting precincts, no matter what tricks of the trade they try to pull.
So they're coming.
If we show up and show out, just like we did for Barack Obama, we need to show up again this year.
Absolutely.
Because if we don't, we're going to wind up having a catastrophe being led by, I'm going to say it on air, being led by someone that really does not care and someone with selfish motives.
And that's what we're about to get if we don't get our behinds up.
If we don't go and vote.
Voting polls. Absolutely.
Yes.
Well, Don, I want to thank you for joining me. We're going to have to do this again so we can talk some more, but I really do appreciate you joining me this evening. You told them just right, man. They got to get up and go vote. And gentlemen, you must go get your prostates checked. So we're going to do a piece on cancer. Go ahead.
As we know, Dexter King, the youngest son of Dr. King, he passed away 2 weeks ago. His birthday was January the 30th. His mother, Coretta Scott King, she passed away on January 30th. She passed away from cervical cancer. He passed away from prostate cancer. You know, you got the C for the female and you got the P for the male. Basically, they're both found in the same area of the body.
It absolutely will. So you all listen. It's critically important that you go out and get yourselves checked. Ladies, we have breast cancer issues. We have cervical cancer issues. We have got to take care of the one and only body we're ever going to get. We won't get a new one. I told somebody the other day we can get some parts, but you can't get a whole body.
Can't take it to the used car lot.
There you go. So thank you so much for joining me this evening. I greatly appreciate it, and we will see you soon.
And thank you, Representative Dianne Hart. Continue doing the great job that you're doing unselfishly for the people of this state and the people of Hillsborough County specifically, because that's where you're from.
Thank you so much. I greatly appreciate it. Look forward to seeing you soon.
Yes, ma'am.
I'll be home after March 8th, and I will be happy to get out with everybody. We have got to get out and prepare ourselves for this election cycle. We cannot sit on the sideline. We got to get in the games.
Got to get in the game.
That's right. We must.
I'm here if you need me.
I'll be calling on you. Thank you.
All right.
When you vote, you can do something about everything. At voteforyourlife.com, it's never been faster or easier to make a plan to vote.
Time is running out, but you still have the chance to use your power.
Check your registration and make sure your address on file is correct.
Find your state's deadlines, learn about local candidates, and request a ballot.
You'll be able to see where candidates stand on issues you care about.
Order a ballot request form to be mailed to you with prepaid postage,
allowing you to vote early, easily, and safely.
Make a plan to vote early by finding your nearest ballot drop box, in-person polling place, or local mailbox.
And this is where you rise, this is where you shine, this is where you become the greatest of all time. History in the making.
Regardless of your age, gender,
race, or financial situation, no matter who you are or how you define yourself.
On Election Day, each one of us can have an impact on all of us.
We elect U.S. and state senators and representatives, as well as some local officials.
These elected officials determine policy that affects our everyday lives.
So do your research
and make sure you are registered to vote.
Then whether early, absentee, or in person on Election Day,
we want you to vote.